At some point today you are going to stop thinking about this video and go back to your normal life. You will eat something. Maybe talk to someone you love. Maybe sit quietly for a while. And somewhere in the back of your mind, buried under everything else, is a fact you already know but almost never let yourself think about. One day, all of that stops. Not for someone else. For you. Personally. Completely. Forever. And the question that every single human being who has ever lived has wanted answered is the same one you have right now. What actually happens? Not philosophically. Not religiously. Not as a comforting story. What does science say happens second by second, minute by minute when a human being dies? Because scientists have actually studied this. They have recorded it. Measured it. And what they found is stranger, more surprising, and in some ways more beautiful than almost anything you would expect. Let us start at the very beginning of the end. Your heart stops. That is usually where death begins. The heart is a muscle, and like all muscles it needs oxygen to keep working. When something goes wrong, a blockage, an injury, organ failure, the heart stops pumping blood. And the moment that happens, a clock starts ticking inside your body. Within about 10 seconds of the heart stopping, your brain runs out of oxygen. And you lose consciousness. You do not feel it happening. One moment you are aware. The next you are not. But here is what is extraordinary. In that exact moment, the moment the brain loses oxygen, something completely unexpected happens. Scientists at the University of Michigan did a study on rats where they induced cardiac arrest and monitored the brain activity in real time. What they found shocked them. In the seconds immediately after the heart stopped, the brain did not go quiet. It exploded with activity. More electrical activity than the scientists had ever recorded during normal waking life. Surges of gamma waves, the same brain waves associated with the highest states of consciousness, vivid dreaming, and deep focus, firing all at once in a burst so powerful it was unlike anything in normal life. The dying brain was not shutting down. It was switching on. And in 2023, researchers at the University of Michigan did the same study on humans, monitoring the brains of 4 dying patients. In 2 of them, they saw the same surge. Right at the border of death, the brain lit up like a supernova. Scientists still do not fully understand why. But it might explain something that millions of people across every culture, every country, and every period of human history have reported. The near-death experience. You have probably heard of these. Someone's heart stops during surgery. They are clinically dead for minutes. Then they come back. And they describe something that should be impossible. A feeling of complete peace. A sensation of floating above their own body. A tunnel of brilliant light. Meeting people they loved who had already died. A life review, watching every moment of their existence play back like a film in seconds. These are not rare. A major study published in The Lancet, one of the most respected medical journals in the world, followed over 300 cardiac arrest patients who were resuscitated. 18% of them reported a near-death experience. Vivid, structured, deeply real. Not a dream. Not confusion. Something that felt more real than ordinary life. And here is what makes scientists genuinely uncomfortable. Some of these patients reported things they should not have been able to know. People who were clinically dead, no heartbeat, no brain activity on the monitors, described watching their own resuscitation from above. They described specific details. What the doctors said. Where the nurses stood. What equipment was used. Details that were later verified by the medical teams as completely accurate. How does a dead brain see anything? Nobody has a clean answer. A researcher named Dr. Sam Parnia at New York University has spent his career studying this. He set up hidden shelves in cardiac resuscitation rooms with images placed face up on top, only visible from above. The idea was that if a patient really floated above their body, they should be able to describe what was on the shelf. The experiment is still running. But what Dr. Parnia says publicly is that consciousness awareness may not be as tied to the physical brain as science has always assumed. That the relationship between the mind and the body at the moment of death is something we do not yet fully understand. Now, while all of this is happening in the brain, the body is beginning its own separate process. And this part is something most people never think about. Because what happens to the physical body after death is one of the most remarkable recycling systems in all of nature. In the hours after death, the body begins to cool. Without circulation, without heat, the temperature drops roughly 1 degree per hour until it matches the surrounding environment. Rigor mortis sets in, a stiffening of the muscles caused by a chemical reaction that happens when cells stop receiving oxygen. It begins in the face and jaw and spreads downward through the body over the next 12 hours. Then it fades again over the following day or two. And then something else begins. The bacteria that have lived inside your gut your entire life, the trillions of microorganisms that helped you digest food and stay healthy, they do not die when you do. They are still very much alive, and without the immune system to keep them contained, they begin to spread through the intestinal walls, into the surrounding tissue, through the bloodstream, slowly consuming the body from the inside. This is decomposition. And it sounds grim. But what it actually is, one of the most generous acts in all of biology. Every atom in your body right now was once part of something else. The carbon in your bones was once in the atmosphere. The iron in your blood was forged in the heart of a dying star billions of years ago. The water in your cells has cycled through oceans, clouds, rivers, and rain more times than anyone can count. Death is not the end of those atoms. It is just the next stage of their journey. The molecules that make you up right now will go on to become soil, grass, trees, insects, birds, other human beings. The matter that is you today will be part of living things for billions of years after your last thought. You will not experience it. But it will happen. Every single piece of you will keep going. But here is the part that science has not solved, and may never solve. The consciousness question. We know what happens to the brain. We know what happens to the body. But what about the thing that feels like you? The part that is aware right now, reading these words, having thoughts, feeling things? Does that stop? Does it continue in some form? Does it transform into something we have no framework to understand? The honest answer from neuroscience, from the most rigorous researchers who have spent their careers studying consciousness, is that we genuinely do not know. And that is not a failure of science. That is science being honest. Because consciousness is the hardest problem in all of human knowledge. We do not even fully understand what it is when you are alive. We do not know why your brain produces subjective experience. Why there is something it feels like to be you and not just a biological machine processing information. The philosopher David Chalmers called it the hard problem of consciousness. And in 50 years of neuroscience we have not solved it. We have mapped the brain in extraordinary detail. We have identified which regions activate for which experiences. But why any of it feels like anything, why there is an inside to experience, remains completely unexplained. And if we cannot explain consciousness in life, explaining what happens to it in death is even harder. Some neuroscientists like Francis Crick, yes, the same man who decoded DNA, believed consciousness was simply what the brain does. When the brain stops, the experience stops. Full stop. Like a television turning off. Others like Dr. Roger Penrose and Dr. Stuart Hameroff proposed something far stranger. That consciousness might be connected to quantum processes in the brain, processes so fundamental they may be woven into the fabric of the universe itself. And that when the brain dies, those quantum patterns do not simply vanish. They disperse back into the universe. Not in any religious sense. Not as a soul floating to heaven. But as information. As patterns. As something that was once organized awareness returning to the fabric of everything. Nobody has proved this. But nobody has disproved it either. And then there is the thing that cuts through all of it. The one finding that every researcher in this field, regardless of their beliefs, regardless of their theory, agrees on. The people who have come closest to death and come back changed. Not traumatized. Not destroyed. Changed. Study after study of near-death experience survivors shows the same pattern. They become less afraid of death. More focused on love and connection. Less interested in money and status. More present. More grateful. People who were selfish become generous. People who were anxious become calm. People who never thought about what mattered suddenly know exactly what matters. Dr. Penny Sartori spent 8 years as an intensive care nurse studying near-death experiences in Wales. She said the most consistent thing she observed was not the content of what people experienced, the lights, the tunnels, the figures. It was what happened to them afterward. Something in the encounter with death, real or perceived, fundamentally rearranged their priorities as human beings. As if being close enough to the edge to see past it changed something at the core of who they were. So here is where we land. Science knows what happens to your brain in the seconds around death, and it is extraordinary. Science knows what happens to your body in the days and weeks after, and it is beautiful in its own way. But the central question, what happens to the awareness that is you, the consciousness that is reading these words right now, that question remains open. And maybe that is the right place to leave it. Because every person who has ever come back from the edge of death says the same thing about what they found there. Not terror. Not emptiness. Something they did not have a word for. Something that made them come back and love the people around them more fiercely than they ever had before. And if that is the only answer we get, maybe that is enough to work with. Your body is made of atoms forged in dying stars. Every piece of you has existed for billions of years and will continue to exist for billions more. The universe clearly does not waste anything. Whatever you are, whatever this awareness is that feels like you right now, it has been part of something enormous for a very long time. And whatever comes next, it will be part of something enormous still. If this made you think differently about something, our next video is going to do the same thing. Hit subscribe button. We will see you there.